What's up guys and girls, welcome to GamerSpace97 and welcome to some PS4 gaming topics. So today I'm going to talk about 8 little known facts about the PlayStation 4. So I'll start off with the number 1. It took 5 years of research and development to make the PS4. So PlayStation 4 creator Mark Cerny spent 5 years developing the console, meeting with hardware engineers, third-party manufacturers, not to mention all the input from the game developer themselves. Cerny and his team at Sony started working on the PS4 back in 2008, just 2 years into the PS3's life cycle, and work never stopped over the next 5 years. The PlayStation 4 was finally unveiled in February 2013 and launched later that year. So, wow, it took 5 years for them to make the PS4, which isn't... yeah, it's quite a long time, and since the PS4 was still big at that time, it's kind of awesome. So, let's go ahead and talk about the second one. So for the second fact, the PS4 CPU is actually quite weak. The power of the next generation console has been tuned for a while now, but the main CPU is actually based on one of AMD's weakest CPU cores, the Jaguar core, which was designed for cheap laptops. While the PS4 has 8 of these Jaguar cores, the CPU performance is far beyond of any modern PC CPU. But that's how it always meant to be. Sony actually asked the developers what they should focus on in the PS4's powerful CPU or GPU. Developer agreed that the GPU was far more important. What the console lacks in CPU power, it's more than makes up with the GPU. So the more it lacks from the CPU, it's making it up for the GPU. So it's quite good. So let's move on to the third fact. So for the third fact, developers have access to only 75% of the resources. Sony has always promoted the PlayStation as a powerful console with 8-core CPU and a massive 8GB of RAM. But those who are actually making the games, it's not as simple as that. Developers have access to only about 75% of the resources. Out of 8GB RAM, about 6GB can be used by games, and 6 of the 8 CPU cores can be used by games as well. The remaining 25% of resources are reserved for the operating system and its various functionalities. Let's move on to the fourth one, shall we? So for the number 4 fact, the PlayStation web browser is very good. Web browsing on console used to be pretty tedious, with outdated browser technology, not to mention surfing with a game controller. However, the PlayStation 4 upped the ante when it came to browsing. The PS4 browser uses the same technology as Chrome and Safari. It's called WebKit, and it's actually the highest scoring browser on any console on the market right now, which is great. I've used the web browser. It's kind of hard to use it with the controller, but you could use the touch screen thingy on the controller or the motion sensing, which makes it a lot more fun, and you can always plug a keyboard and try that out. So go check the web browser out. So let's move on to the number 5 fact, guys. So for the number 5 fact, Sony used Microsoft's Xbox One DRM backlash to push the PS4. So back in summer of 2013, it was revealed that Microsoft Xbox One would have a very restrictive DMR policy, such as no used games and allows no connectivity. Naturally, this drew a lot of bad PR towards Microsoft, and Sony were the first one to take advantage of it. You know, Sony getting that all. When Sony later realized that just how much heat Microsoft drew from its always-on DRM policies tied to the Xbox One, they rewrote their E3 2013 presentation to focus on how the PS4 was open and how games were DRM free. Throwing multiple jabs at Microsoft and their policy during their presentation, including a funny video on used game, which instantly went viral. You know, that video where they ask you how to share, or they teach you how to share a PS4 game, and they just, give you the game to another guy. So that's basically how you lend a game to a friend. Let's move on to the number 6 fact. Now this is quite a funny one. So for the number 6 fact, some love for Bungie. You know, Bungie is the developer for Halo and those games. So let me just tell you guys about it. So Sony only trusted their own first-party studios when it came to early access to the hardware and feedback. When it comes to getting feedback on the DualShock 4 controller for the first-person shooter development, Sony approached the guys at Bungie, the developers of Halo. Bungie were the first outside developers to get access to the new controller. So later, Sony approached other third-party publisher and developers for feedback. Since the initial meeting with Bungie, Sony and Bungie have worked closely together, with Bungie's upcoming Destiny game getting some exclusive content on the PS4. It was a huge sign of trust from Sony to show the controller to Bungie, considering they only had done games for the Xbox system up until now. As you guys know, there's been no game developed by Bungie for the PS4, only for the Xbox, like Halo. So we'll move on to fact number 7. So this is another funny one. Number 7 is playing coy with everyone. So Sony tricked developers into thinking the console only had 4GB of RAM. All dev kits that Sony shipped to the developer prior to the February 2013 announcement only had 4GB of RAM. Sony didn't want Microsoft to find out what they were really up to with that console. When Sony finally announced the specs of the console when it's 8GB GDDR5 RAM, developers with working dev kits were just surprised as everyone else. That was quite hard to read. GDDR5 RAM. GDD. Yeah. Well, Sony is quite tricky, but it's good that we have 8GB of RAM. It's always more better. Yeah, we'll just move on to the number 8, shall we? Yeah. So for the last fact, the number 8 fact is one of the coolest facts that I read. So there's another CPU in there with its own RAM and flash storage. It's never shown on spec sheet, but the PlayStation 4 has a CO processor developed by ARM to handle background tasks, which has its own dedicated 246MB of RAM. By comparison, the total system RAM for the PS3 was 256, with another 256 BM for graphics. In addition to that, the PlayStation 4 has also 32MB flash memory storage for firmware and other system operation. So that is it for the number 8 fact. As you guys heard, it has its own CPU with its own RAM, so that's why the PS4 is quite fast when you switch between the PlayStation Store and those stuff, because the more RAM, I think, the better, and it's quite nice to hear those stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that thumbs button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video. If you did not, please be sure to leave a comment down below on your thoughts about this video. Otherwise, have an awesome day and happy gaming. Bye bye guys.